A very pleasant morning to you and welcome to the Idea newspaper review. My name is Cynthia Bassi and I'm glad to be doing this with you this morning. And so we have some papers to go through today, and the first paper I have with me here is the Guardian newspaper. And the biggest story here, I just have to smile to this, Fubara Adeleke's exit shatters embattled PDP, dims 2027 hopes. And then if we go upwards, we see that OPE triumphs at Nigeria Technology Awards. OPE is doing very well. But then you can find the Fubara and Adeleke's exit from PDP on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And then on page 5, TCN faces reps panel hinges instability on vandalism gas shortage. And downwards on page 30, still on the Guardian newspaper, TIV communities file 100 billion naira suit against Taraba government army over alleged forceful land seizure. If you want to know what that story entails, you can find that on page 30 of the Guardian newspaper. And on page 2 of the Guardian, still on the Guardian newspaper, Soyinka condemns military intervention in Benin. Lagos demolitions. He has a lot to say about this. If you want to see the details of this story and what he has to say, you can find this on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. And Nigeria faces more shortage as Canada rules out express entry for doctors. This can also be found on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. On page 3, ECOWAS lauds Nigeria for foiling Benin coup attempt. And then on page 3, Senate halts WAEC curriculum change over consents for 2026 candidates. And on page 5, insecurity has no religious undertone, Fagbemi tells visiting U.S. delegates. Is this true? Are we still contesting if it's not a religious war or a religious genocide? You can find this story on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper. And then on page 29, still on the Guardian newspaper, Aid accuses Cross River local government chairman of mismanagement and nepotism. Okay, I think that's the much we can take from the Guardian, the front paper of the Guardian newspaper. Moving to the next paper I have here with me, the Nation newspaper. Still, the biggest story here, Fubara joins APC as Adeleke picks Accord Party ticket. Okay, why we change parties by the governors. Two major developments involving two governors that will shape the political firmament took place yesterday. Rivers State Governor Simi Nalayi Fubara defected to the AII Progressive Congress. And sorry, the All Progressive Congress, I beg your pardon, the APC, and he dumped the People's Democratic Party. And also Governor Adeleke of Osun State too also defected the party, and they have so much to say about their defection. But I see this as something that is affecting the PDP greatly. And I just feel like if the PDP needed reminder that politics has consequences, then this is it. Because for so long we've known the PDP as the, national, I think the strongest national party in Nigeria. But then seeing this, the reported exit of Rivers State Governor Simin Alayi Fubara and Osun State Governor Adeleke Ademola is not just another round of defections. I think it's a political earthquake for the PDP, and it's shaking every foundations the PDP as Nigeria's main opposition party stands. And for a party that is already struggling with internal fractures, so many leadership downturns, so many leadership tussles, and so many post-election trauma, and losing these two sitting governors, I think it's going to send a brutal message, and it's going to shake the party and Nigeria too greatly, because we've seen PDP go through a lot of things, and theoretically their exit is very measurable. It's going to destabilize PDP somehow greatly, but we know that governors are not just members, and they are power centers of parties. So if we have two governors that hold a state, that hold the control of a state, the structures of a state, we know the influence they can bring to a party, and this is going to shape even grassroots politics as well for the PDP. And in Rivers, Fubara's exit, I think it reflects that prolonged power struggle that exposed the PDP's inability to manage internal conflict. We went through those conflicts with the PDP, how they went all the way. Instead of a conflict resolution, rather, what we saw happen in the PDP could only lead to political exhaustion. I think somehow this is what it is, this exhaustion that breeds this exit for Fubara and for Osun State Governor Adeleke. I just feel like his exit is very questionable, and it raises not just a question, a very dangerous question here, because if a sitting governor like Adeleke leaves the PDP platform, then I think there says a lot about safety and relevance here. But then we have to see other stories in the nation's newspaper, and okay, still here. OPE triumphs at the Nigeria Technology Award. I think this is a big congratulations to OPE. This can be found on page 28 of the Nation newspaper, and OPE has been doing a lot. OPE has been doing a lot. I don't have much to say about this, but I just want to say congratulations. But then you can find that on page 28 of the Nation newspaper. And moving downwards a little, on page 5, release my husband's autopsy report, widow cries out. You want to know what that is all about, or what that story entails, get details of the story, you can find that on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. And still on page 5 of the Nation newspaper, flights for Ekiti Airport. Okay, you want to know what that really means, that can be found on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. And EFCC quizzes ex-AGF Malami over alleged terrorism financing. My public record unblemished. This can be found on page 2, still on the Nation newspaper. And let's go upward a little. Education budget has risen by 1.98 trillion naira in 2 years, says the Vice President Shetima. Okay, that can be found on page 4 of the Nation newspaper, and on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. Fagbemi, 860 terrorism convictions secured in 7 years. Okay, let's get details on this. Let's get details on this on page 3 of the Nation newspaper, and on page 5 and page 2. On page 2, ECOWAS lost Nigeria for Benin rep intervention. So the president has been showing up and showing off, and pledging his allegiance, and not just pledging his allegiance, we've been seeing his support so far for Benin Republic, and him deploying a troop, sending a letter to the Senate, to the Nigerian Senate, to deploy troops to Benin. A lot of eyebrows have raised to these, a lot of questions, because this is a critical time for Nigeria as well, not just for Benin. This is the time where Nigeria is facing a lot of insecurity challenges, not just we've seen from abduction to different levels of terrorism, different levels of criminalism in Nigeria, kidnappings, and whatnot, killings. So people are beginning to ask questions. We know how to solve people's problem, but we do not know how to solve our own. I don't know, but that is what people are saying. So many questions are being asked here. So many eyebrows are being raised. And if you want to know, but I just feel like the president is coming from the stance of him being the chairman of the ECOWAS, and it's only right of him to, take the necessary step, and this, I think, is the necessary step he is taking. But I do not have much to say about that. If you want to know about this story and have more info, you can find it on page 2 of the Nation newspaper, and on page 5, 1,660 delegates to pick Osun APC candidate by December 13. I think that's all from the Nation newspaper. Let's move to the next newspaper I have here with me in the Daily Trust. Okay, still congratulations to OPE. I think everybody's celebrating OPE, and yes, triumphs at the Nigerian Technology Award. Okay, the biggest story here, Benin praises flag over troops deployment. Okay, by Joshua Adeyemi Sawao Tezungwe, that Hatu Liman and Shehu and the rest of them. The Senate yesterday approved President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's request for the deployment of Nigerian troops to the Republic of Benin, endorsing an action the president had taken days earlier to avert an attempted disruption of democratic governance in the neighboring country. This is a very big story, and like I said, starting, everybody have their eyes on this. Everybody have a lot to say about this. I think the deployment of Nigerian troops to the Republic of Benin, I think, is one of those decisions that may sound like very simple, very easy on the surface, but it carries a lot of weight on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that's what a lot of people will not understand. It carries serious regional and political and also security implications beneath it, because like I said before, the president of Nigeria is the chairman of the ECOWAS. So first, this is not Nigeria. This is not Nigeria going to war with Benin or for Benin. I think this is out of what we can do as big brothers in Africa, as the biggest brother, if I should put it that way. Nigeria is the biggest brother in Africa, especially in the West African region. So it's only right for Nigeria to show their support. It's only right for Nigeria to, come for their brothers in this very critical moment for Benin Republic. And Nigeria, I think Nigeria understands the reality perhaps better than any other country in West Africa, because we've been doing this, playing this role for other brother countries like Sierra Leone, like Liberia. We've done this so many times, and from in time memorial. And I think let me come from a strategic perspective. I think this deployment is about forward defense rather than a wait for threats to fully mature. And if it fully matures, this is a neighboring country to Nigeria. Who knows, it can, cross into Nigeria territory. And the idea is just to contain and, neutralize them earlier before it destabilizes the border, because we share a border with this country, and, we do not want it to destabilize borders, because there are communities in these borders. And in as much as we are talking about security in Nigeria, if anything happens to a country closer to us, I mean, it is going to affect our country too, and that's a security problem too. So when we talk about security and security measures and security operations and strategic decisions we need to take, these are some of the aspects we need to look at. We've always talked about taking proactive measures rather than reactive measures, and this, I think, is the right way to also curtail security or insecurity challenges in Nigeria as well, because there are communities in these borders. Take, for example, the Badagry community. So I think this is the best thing to do, just to, sort of contain and neutralize the issue going on in Benin. And I also see this from a diplomatic layer. This move Nigeria is taking, I think Nigeria is asserting its role as regional leader, like I said before, and not more of a rhetoric, but I feel like it is true action. We need to see what Nigeria can do, because we are not only playing the role of embodying or containing our own situations. We have to do that for our brother countries as well, and this is what I see Nigeria is doing here. But then I said so much. We need to move and see other stories on the Daily Trust newspaper, and let's go down a little. On page 10, we see International Human Rights Day while violations continue to rise in Nigeria. Okay, this story seems very deep, and if you want to know or get more details about what it's about, you can find it on page 10 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And then Daily Trust TV journalist win Wole Soyinka Investigative Reporting Awards. Congratulations to the Daily Trust TV journalist. This can be found on page 6 if you want to know who this person is. And then on page 29, court sentences police to death for killing students. This is not so much of a good news, but if you want to know what transpired or get full details of what this story entails, you can find it on page 29 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And on page 6, protests in Adamawa community over killing of women. Okay, I think that is the much from the Daily Trust newspaper. I'm moving to the next newspaper, the Vanguard newspaper. This very bright Wednesday morning, December 10. Okay, biggest story here, taking the front cover. Nigeria Sahel states differ over detained aircraft soldiers. Nigeria military aircraft violated Burkina Faso airspace, Sahelian states. How France helped Benin for coup d'etat. Macron's aid. That can be found on page 9. And the first story, the Nigerian Sahel state differ over detained aircraft soldier, can be found on page 5. And then on page 9 as well, federal government to U.S. delegation. We have security challenges, not religious challenges. Can we say we agree with this? I can say to an extent, a security challenge is a security challenge, be it religious, be it whatever. A security challenge is a security challenge, and yes, it's only right for the U.S. government to work closely with the Nigerian government and see how they can curtail these insecurity issues in Nigeria. And then on page 13, Nigeria-U.S. ties are treasured robust, and this is from Sunday Diary. That can be found on page 13 of the Vanguard newspaper. And going downwards a little, okay, NDDC boss gets NIP award. So many awards from the end of the year, and it's congrats to others tell Tinubu. This can be found on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper, and there's a little cartoon that always comes with the Vanguard newspaper. You can check it to see what it's about. And on the Punch newspaper, tension rise over alleged 42 billion naira, $42 billion oil revenue shortfall. This can be found on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. On page 2 of the Punch newspaper, this is governors versus the NNPC. And upwards on the Punch newspaper, PDP rages as Fubara joins APC. Adeleke shifts to Accord. This can be found on page 7 and 20 respectively of the Punch newspaper. This is a very big story. This is big story today. And then NNPC governors auditors trades blows over $42 billion remittance accusation. FAAC steps in 6 reviews. Still on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. And then downwards, reps summon ministers over budget underperformance. This can be found on page 21 of the Punch newspaper. And on page 20, still on the Punch newspaper, probe, EFCC detains ex-AGF Malami. Okay, I think this story too is also in all other newspapers. You want to know what this is about, so you can find it on page 20 of the Punch newspaper. And on page 2 and 20 respectively, still on the Punch newspaper, ECOWAS fears coup surge. Burkina Faso holds Nigerian soldiers. Okay, that's also a big story, and since yesterday it has been taken all over the news, and you want to know what that is, if it's going to brew trouble, if we have to be worried about this, or they can solve it as African brothers. Let's see. You can find that on page 2 and page 20 from the Punch newspaper. And then moving to the last newspaper I have here with me today, from the Daily Sun newspaper. Big story here: Senate okays deployment of Nigerian troops to Benin. Okay, still a big story, still an interesting story, and as I said before, I just see this as Nigeria deserves that clarity, or Nigerians rather deserve that clarity of rules of engagement. People want to understand why we have security concerns in Nigeria, and then we can, react swiftly, or we can respond rather swiftly to a problem from another country. But from my understanding, I've shared it with you before now, that I just think we have to play the role, especially as member states of, ECOWAS. And I just feel like what Nigerians want to understand is the rules of engagement. They want to understand the objectives of this mission, and without clear communication, I feel like even a well-intentioned security decision can lose public trust. So the people need to understand. The people want to see the bigger picture, and I feel like, the deployment sends a clear message that Nigeria's security challenges are no longer domestic alone. This is what I think. They are regional. Like I explained before, if our brother country, neighboring country is going through challenges, it's surely somehow going to affect our country, because we have a border. They have a port. We use their port sometimes. We use this border to transport goods, and remember, we are trying to grow the inter-African, trading system. So if anything happens to a brother country, especially the one we share a border with, and then it's a problem for Nigeria as well, and regional problems requires regional solutions. So I think it's kudos to Nigeria and kudos to President Tinubu for doing this. But I just feel like success will depend on balance. We just have to balance it, protecting Nigeria's borders, protecting the lives of Nigerians in the country, especially because of what we've been facing in the past few weeks, and then supporting a neighboring country, very important, and also ensure that national security at home is not compromised in the process. Very, very important, because it's only right for people to, when there is no clear communication, and I emphasize, it's only right for people to come out and begin to wonder and ask questions, what is going on? Why will Nigeria be so fast? Nigeria have this, this amount of equipment, and then we cannot, deploy aids or solutions in our own country. But I just feel like this is diplomacy backed by boots on the ground. And like I said before, let's not look at it from the angle of Nigeria is going to just help another country and abandon their country. Let's look at it from the ECOWAS point of view. We are a member of the ECOWAS, and we are a leader, not just a member of the ECOWAS. We are a leader in the ECOWAS, and it's only right for Nigeria to do what is right for not just Benin, but for West Africa as a whole. But then we have to go through and see what the story can be found on page 6 and 27 on the Daily Sun newspaper. And then we move upward a little, we can find on page 25 of the Daily Sun newspaper, 26 states raise external debt to $239 million in first quarter. Imo, Enugu, Oyo, Kaduna top borrowers list. Interesting. Okay, and on page 2, NNPC 36-year jinx with 355 barrels per day production output. Nigeria's energy reviver on track. Ojulari is talking. Okay, this can be found on page 2 of the Daily Sun newspaper. And then summons Education Minister over sudden change in WAEC curriculum. This can be found on page 2 and 27 of the Daily Sun newspaper. And downwards, Senate probes utilization of 15 billion naira safe schools fund. Queries police 6.2 billion naira share. This can be found on page 26 of the Daily Sun newspaper, and on page 27, 2027, ADC dismisses zoning debates, prioritizes building strong opposition. And then on page 26 as well, Adeleke dumps PDP, joins Accord as Fubara moves to APC. And then the last story here, kidnapping, Gumi stirs fresh controversy. Says abduction of children lesser evil than killing soldiers. Very interesting statement. Okay, and Third Fund unveils security master plan for tertiary institutions. This is very, very imperative that the not just Third Fund, I think the Ministry of Education too should be talking about security measures at this point in time, because I know the Ministry of Education have been doing a whole lot since the beginning of this year until now. We've been seeing a whole lot, talking of the TVET, talking of different initiatives being rolled out. But this is a time where they need to sit down and begin to talk about security measures they need to employ for students in schools, tertiary institutions, primary schools, secondary schools, and the likes. Okay, but this story can be found on page 5 and 28. These stories can be found on page 5 and 26 or 28 respectively of the Daily Sun newspaper. But that's the much I can take for today. We've seen what we have from different newspaper, from the Daily Trust, from Vanguard, from the Nation newspaper, from the Guardian, from Punch, and of course Daily Sun newspaper. You should get these newspapers and see what is happening in Nigeria, see the big stories in Nigeria, so you won't be left out. But for me, it's good morning once again, and see you next time.